And we're live, everybody. Welcome in. It is Monday, April 29th, noon Central. Thank you so much for joining me today. Huge news. If you're following the world of Tesla, these last 2 weeks have been just crazy. Baidu, Tesla agree on mapping deal for FSD in China, sources say. Now, for those that follow the story closely, this has been something that probably has been in the works for a while. A lot of people that were talking about this thought this was going to be coming a lot later than now, or perhaps even never, because of some things happening in China as far as how much they want to keep data to themselves and whatever. There's a lot of different variables that happen in China as it pertains to, let's say, self-driving technology. But this bit of news actually came as a surprise to a lot of people, especially in the timing. This has led to the stock. This was just crazy, not financial advice, not investment advice, but just to kind of give you context as to how big of a deal this is. The stock is up almost 17% as of right now since this news broke. A little bit about the piece. I'll go through the Reuters article here so you can get an idea of what's actually happening. So as of today, April 29th, on Monday, Baidu, China's major internet search company, reached an agreement with Tesla to grant the car company access to its mapping license for data collection on China's public roads. Two people familiar with the matter said the deal clears a final regulatory hurdle for Tesla's driver assistance system, which Tesla calls full self-driving, to be offered in China, the sources said. In case you're not familiar, FSD is basically the allows a car to essentially drive itself really anywhere as long as the person is paying attention. The special thing about this bit of news, though, as it pertains to China, is that China is not only the largest car market in the world. They sell a little bit over 20 million units per year. The US is second with about 14 or so million units. It's also by far the largest EV market in the world. I believe they sell somewhere upwards of, I forget the exact number, but somewhere between 5 and 7 million EVs per year, probably a little bit more now. But essentially, it's the largest EV market in the world. And now, since Tesla only sells electric vehicles, not only is Tesla one of the biggest players in the country, but now the country is allowing them to release their self-driving technology as well on top of that. And that has a lot of different implications, which we'll talk about in this video. Some additional information from the article. With the mapping service license, Tesla will be permitted to legally operate its FSD software on Chinese roads, and its fleets can gather data about the vehicle's surroundings, such as road layouts, traffic signs, and nearby buildings. It is not immediately clear whether the collected data will belong to Tesla or Baidu, but essentially what this marks is that now that that relationship has been forged in China, Tesla is now allowed to operate FSD in the country. In case you're not familiar with how the system works, essentially, Tesla, their cars have 8 cameras around the vehicle, and they gather a bunch of video data, then they send it back to its headquarters, and they have an AI brain that uses that data to figure out how to drive. And that's been running in North America for the better part of a month or so, in Canada and the United States. And now China is giving Tesla the ability to do the same exact thing. Now, this is big. This is big. One of the reasons why this is big is China is traditionally has been one of the places, especially within the context of the Tesla story, that people have had a lot of reservations as far as what the relationship's going to be like in the long term. You know, the U.S. and China have had some, let's say, difficult relationship in the last few years, and there were people that were concerned that China would not really allow Tesla to operate self-driving technology because of data concerns, privacy concerns. The Chinese government operates very differently than the United States government. But now this step, you know, and there's this discussion about, are they going to keep the data there? Is Tesla going to be able to send some of it back so that its computer can process it in the States? Or do they have to build the computer in China? But regardless, what this points to is that one of the more restrictive governments in the world is allowing Tesla to operate its self-driving technology in the country. And in my opinion, what that implies is that if China is going to allow Tesla to operate FSD, it's very likely that every other country will allow Tesla to operate FSD. The United States, in some states, they can already essentially work their FSD. They can operate a robotaxi if they wanted to, as long as they clear some safety hurdles, which the company is confident in. In Europe, it's a little bit more slow going because their regulatory environment is a lot more slow. But I think it's going to be very difficult to keep this technology from progressing now that you have a country like China saying, yep, go ahead, put it in place. And I think one of the main reasons why isn't only going to be a better safety thing for the population. Self-driving cars and cars that can drive themselves, I think will very easily prove that they're a lot safer than humans. So I don't think any jurisdiction is going to want to be like, well, China's allowing this, how come we're not allowing it, right? So I think that's one forcing function. It's going to reduce the cost of transportation by a lot, because once you remove the driver, which is the most expensive part of a transportation system, all of a sudden you'll be able to go from point A to point B at a much cheaper price, so cheaper and safer, plus the other things that come with self-driving technology. You can change the interior of the taxi to drive a certain way. You don't really have to have everybody pointing in one way. You can change the form factor over time. So there's a lot of pluses for this technology. I'm actually a little bit surprised that this has happened now. One of the theories that I was seeing on X in the last couple of days, since they announced the 8.8 unveil for the robotaxi on August 8th, Tesla is set to show their robotaxi to the world. The dogs are very excited about it as well, as you can hear. The theory was that they were going to unveil they were going to announce that they were partnering with China at that point. But this announcement comes about 3 to 4 months before that unveil happens. So looks like Tesla's getting ahead of it a little bit. They're setting the foundation for what's likely to be a announcement of a robotaxi that could also operate in China from the get-go instead of waiting for approval. So a lot of implications there, truly a lot of implications there. Now, if we do the math on how many cars Tesla has right now that can operate FSD, in the United States, there's about 2 million cars that have the right hardware to essentially operate full self-driving technology, which require what's called the hardware 3 computer or later, and the 8 camera system. And worldwide, Tesla likely has somewhere between 4 to 5 million cars that have that hardware. By the end of next year, they'll be closer to 7 million. And by the end of the following year, they'll probably be close to 10 million cars that can have this hardware to operate. And with the China unveil, I think instead of people thinking about just the United States cars being able to operate FSD, I think everybody's shifting their mindset to, okay, it's not just going to be the 2 million cars, it's going to be every car that Tesla sells. And I think, this is my hypothesis. This is not investment or anything advice here, but I think this is one of the reasons why the stock has moved this way today. It's because I think people might be realizing that the self-driving story, the AI story for Tesla, is not just a bunch of us crazies on YouTube talking about it. Looks like it's actually happening. One of the tweets, God forbid I said that. Oh my God. One of the posts on X that Elon Musk had in the last 24 hours or so. He said, Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla, in case you're not familiar, Tesla will spend around $10 billion this year in combined training and inference AI, the latter being primarily in car. Any company not spending at this level and doing so efficiently cannot compete. And it's interesting that this post came out about 24 hours ago in relation to this announcement, because this is the type of investment that Tesla is putting forth to have FSD work in China. So if they're saying we're going to spend $10 billion to make this technology work, clearly it's not just going to be a United States thing, it's going to be a China thing. At some point, it's going to be a Europe thing. As Tesla gets more and more cars out there in the wild, it's going to become a South America thing and an Africa thing, right? And an Asia thing. And these things obviously will take time. This is not tomorrow Tesla's going to be able to operate FSD everywhere. Absolutely not. It will take time. But the pieces are there. The approvals are there. The governments are willing to play ball with Tesla and letting them operate their technologies in their countries. Like I said before, if China's going to allow them to do it, do you really think places like Texas or Florida or New York or California are really going to be like, no, you can't operate here? China is one of the United States' biggest competitors. It would be insane. I mean, the headline will write itself. Politicians don't allow Tesla to operate self-driving technology, but China does. You know, a certain party is going to roll with that, right? So that's really, really interesting. And then as it pertains to this as well, and I think this is another piece of news that's going to be linked to Elon Musk's compensation package that's being revoted on in about a month or so in June during their yearly shareholder meeting. So if you follow this story, there was a compensation plan that a judge rescinded in Delaware a couple months ago, basically saying that $55 billion comp plan that Elon that shareholders voted for back in 2018. It's rescinded, which means that they have to go back and vote on it again. There was some noise about that potentially not passing because people are upset about what Elon's saying on X, and he's not paying attention to the company, blah, blah, blah. I think this sort of shows that there's very few people, very, very few CEOs that are able to craft the relationships with China in the way that Elon has with Tesla. So Tesla is I believe the only automaker, one of the very first companies that has a wholly owned business in China that doesn't really require them to partner with a Chinese company to sell cars in the region. And him being able to go into China and also strike a deal with the Chinese government, in Beijing in particular for this case, I don't think there's many CEOs or leaders that can go into China and command that level of relationship and respect with the Chinese government that would allow them to gain the trust to say, yep, you are allowed to gather data in our regions, and you're allowed to leverage the data that we have so that you can operate your business, which is in direct competition with Chinese companies, right? The Chinese government wants Chinese companies to be super, super successful and to essentially give the ability and the power to an American company to come in and leverage its very good technology to compete against its homegrown guys says a lot. Now, will China leverage that to get better with theirs and potentially do a little bit of stealing here and there? Some of the companies, of course, but that's how things get better in China, at least, right? So I think that says a lot. And the point I'm trying to make here is that I would be shocked after this development if the comp package for Elon for some reason doesn't get passed. And this is probably going to be one of the main things, is that clearly, people can make the argument, oh, he's distracted with X or Twitter. Okay, people have a right to have that opinion. I disagree with that opinion, but let's say that's the case. And then now he's able to strike a deal like this with China. I don't know. I think investors will be like, yeah, I don't think any other CEO can make that happen. And, you talk about the long-term potential of, earnings for the company with full self-driving technology, with robotaxi technology. The numbers write themselves, right? And sometime this week, I'll put up my sort of updated model. I've done models in the past where I've tried to model this out in the future. Now we're getting a little bit more concrete data that I think helps us understand the future a little bit better. And so now it's just not a North America equation. Now you're really lumping in the rest of the world. Because again, if China's going to approve, I think everybody else will approve it at some point as well. So yeah, super interesting development. If you have any questions, comments, let's do some Q&A right now. If you're live, type question before your question so it's easy for me to find in the chat. And if you're on recording, pull up your live chat so you can follow along with us so you know exactly what people are saying. And thank you to the 4,000 people between X and YouTube that are joining us live. Thank you very much. What a day. What a day, man. What a crazy few days. This kind of reminds me of like 2013. I've been following this story for so freaking long. 2013, there was this huge sentiment shift when Tesla was able to post their first profitable quarter. And Sawyer Merritt actually brought this up on X. It's like, man, I can't really remember a day like this happening in a long time or ever. And I was like, maybe 2013, but the point he made was, social media wasn't nearly as big. The investor base in the company wasn't nearly this big. The attention wasn't nearly this big. And so this seems to be one of the quickest 180s that has happened. And it really started with their earnings report. What was it, last week? Right? It was last week. Crazy how things can change so quick. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Here we go. What would the monthly price of FSD in China be from Shleel? Sorry if I've mispronounced your name on YouTube. Great question. We don't have any details about that. I did read something out there that said that a lot of competitors kind of offer some of the ADAS stuff, like so the driver assistance systems, automated driver assistance systems, ADAS, in their vehicles in China already. But there's a little bit of a markup that goes in the price, obviously. So I don't know if they'll just bake it into the car, or if they can claim that FSD, or they can prove that FSD is better than the other ones. Maybe they'll do the same thing, which is $99 equivalent per month in China. Tesla tends to have similar pricing strategy that's sort of adjusted for the market and the demand that they have in those countries. So if they think that they have a lot of competition for self-driving technology or ADAS technology, they might have it at a lower price than the United States. But I think long term, if they can come out with a system that's unsupervised, so one where you don't even have to pay attention, I think that will command a lot of demand, and they'll be able to basically dictate price at that point. So that's my guess. Let's see. Do you really think we could see up to 3 new models on 8/8? And this is the August Robotaxi event. I mean, this is the big point of speculation, right? Because it's like, they're calling it the Robotaxi unveil. But the other thing that's going on with this as well is that on the earnings call, Elon Musk sort of made the sort of a little loose of a announcement that said, kind of, sort of, they're going to be showing this cheaper vehicle as well that they're building on their existing lines. So I would guess there's going to be the purpose-built Robotaxi, and we may get this sort of super highly rumored $25,000 compact car, or whatever that cheaper car is going to be. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's 2. I don't know if there's going to be 3. But there's been this van in the works forever now, it feels like. So maybe we'll get that as well. But if I were to guess, I'm going to say a Robotaxi and a cheaper $25,000 car. So we'll see. We'll see about that. Does Tesla have its own data center in China? This is a great question. And this is sort of like from Ondar on YouTube. This sort of talks about how will Tesla execute this thing, right? And I think how they roll out the software is going to point to what their strategy is going to be. If they're able to have FSD in China relatively quickly, then that, I think, implies, and maybe I don't know exactly how much compute or stuff they have in China right now. That sort of implies that they're taking data from the United States and sending it to China, so that, or taking data from China, sending it to the United States, putting it through the computer and sending it back to China with China's data, so that they can make the car drive itself. If they have FSD in the country relatively quickly, then I think that's what's happening. If it takes a while, like let's say it takes 12 months to 24 months, they probably have to build their own data center in the country and process their own data that they gathered in the country. They can't cross data paths, I guess, between the United States and China. And then, so that would imply that it's there. So depending on how long it takes for FSD to come out, I think will give us a clue if they have a data center in China or not. Somebody might know the answer to this for sure, but I think how they roll it out will tell us, will give us a really good clue on what's going on. Do you think China will let Tesla gather FSD data for a few years and then do a rug pull like US did with TikTok? I highly doubt that. I think the TikTok situation is more about the Chinese government potentially having direct influence on social media algorithms that could sort of dictate what a population would be able to see or not see. Whereas with this, it's just purely just driving is driving, right? I mean, I think driving is driving, unless they can prove that the Chinese government is somehow getting road intel from the United States in China that's going to be helpful for them in some way, which I don't think Tesla would even be allowed to do, given some of the regulations potentially. So we'll see. We'll see. That's a interesting question, but I think the TikTok and Tesla thing live on 2 different planes, but I could be wrong. Let's see. Trump has said that he would tariff, quote unquote, any products made outside the U.S. Should he win, would Mexico plans still happen? Yeah, because I really don't think, I think this applies more to countries that are not in, that have already really good relationships with the United States. Mexico, Canada, sort of the North American countries have really good relationships already. And I don't really think that the United States and Trump would nix any of that. The Mexican plant will totally still happen. And one thing with Trump, like his politics or not, just sort of looking at this agnostically, he tends to put in policies that are quite pro-business, and something like this would really hurt Tesla's ability to create jobs in the United States, sort of that long tail, because the more cars that are sold in the United States from Mexican plants, then one can make the argument like, well, that's creating an ecosystem for electric vehicles and self-driving technology and repair shops and service centers, and Tesla grows and more people buy Teslas, and Tesla's an American company and they make more taxes, right, from selling those cars and blah, blah, blah. So I think long term, I don't think, he'll say whatever he needs to say, but then I think when it comes to brass, getting down and actually signing stuff and making stuff happen, I don't think this will impact Tesla's ability to get a Mexican plant going. Okay, let's see. The cheaper car will be a Model 3 body amortized with pre-assembled castings and on-box systems, wiring, steering, and brakes. I have to sneeze. Excuse me. First time I think I've done that on stream, on one of these at least. It could be. I think that's one of the theories is that, since they're leveraging their existing lines in now with this cheaper car, with the Model Y and Model 3, one of the theories is that, they'll take the Model 3 body and then the interiors, the insides will be changed up. I don't know if that's going to be the case. I still feel like it's going to have a smaller form factor. They could have some shared castings maybe. They could maybe work the rear or front casting in there, but I still feel like they'll have a different shape. I think they'll just leverage parts of the line to make this compact car or this cheaper car, but it'll have a different form factor. It'll be maybe a 4-seater with maybe a 2-door or a 4-door hatchback that has an even smaller back seat and smaller front trunk and a smaller trunk to kind of get it to be shrunk down a little bit. So we'll have all those answers on 8.8. Whatever the answer is, I think what's thank you. Whatever the answer is that I think the key takeaway here is that Tesla will be able to sell an even cheaper car, and not just in the United States, but probably in other markets as well. And that cheaper car will have the full self-driving technology, which will allow the company to sell a product that is very differentiated from somebody else. One of the things it could come out with and say is like, hey, we have a $30,000, $25,000, $30,000 car before any EV tax credits. It's never going to break down. It's going to have no maintenance. We'll include insurance. We'll include self-driving technology. We'll make it super cheap to finance. We'll give you the financing. We'll give you, the charging plan. We'll give you the service plan. The only thing you have to pay is $500 a month. And that makes it super easy for anybody to be like, yep, sign me up. Because, most people, at least in the United States, are monthly payment buyers or payment buyers. They don't really shop based on the MSRP of the car. They want to look for what's the best car I can get for $300 a month, $400 a month, $500 a month. And as Tesla goes down the pricing ladder, they can get more and more competitive, and they can make it so that it's super easy for a customer to be like, yeah, I'm going to go with Tesla because I pay, $500 a month, and I literally don't have to worry about anything. Insurance is taken care of. Maintenance is taken care of. The loan is taken care of. It can drive itself when I need it to, so on and so forth. It comes with charging. It becomes a killer product and a thing that just basically sells itself. I think that's where Tesla's going down. We'll see. I could be wrong, but that's my guess. What do you call it a cheaper car when it's a high-value car at a lower price point? Tesla doesn't make cheap goods. So that's the technicality of the word, affordable. Thank you, Alex. I see that comment. When I say cheap, I mean price. I don't mean like quality-wise. And maybe I'm just using the wrong word. But yeah, more affordable car for those that cheap maybe doesn't... don't like that word. From Bram, what did Tesla learn from previous FSD versions that made them go to the V12 architecture? What value do previous FSD versions bring to V12? Maybe also on an architectural level. That's actually a great question. So the thing with V12 is that all the data that Tesla has gathered from their system is not necessarily from V11. Just by Tesla having a fleet of vehicles that have cameras around them, that's allowed Tesla to gather a ton of data around the roads where they operate in. And then of the car driving those roads as well, going through stop signs, stoplights, and whatever. What V12 does is that it allows Tesla to, instead of write code by hand to navigate those worlds, they feed it into a AI brain, essentially, that just analyzes the video, and then it spits out basically a line of commands for the car to then drive itself based on what it sees. And the way it gets better is just you give it more data and you give it more chips to process that data, and the system gets better and better and better and better and better. And that's the core difference between what Tesla is doing now versus really what everybody else is doing. What everybody else is doing is what I mentioned before, which is coding. They have a bunch of sensors and they try to figure out how to navigate the world using all those sensors. Tesla's just using cameras and an AI brain, which gives them the advantage of getting better much faster because now they have a AI that's figuring out how to make the car drive. And then the other thing as well is that because it's just a vision system, it's just the cameras, it makes it much cheaper to make those cars than everybody else. So instead of spending tens or potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in making a car with LiDAR and ultrasonics and whatever, Tesla just has to buy 8 cameras and put an inference computer in the car, which is maybe $2,000 maximum for all those parts. And all of a sudden they have a self-driving car. So that's really the core difference here. And now with China approving them, it could be that Tesla's going to be able to do this not just in China, but again, like I talked about before, potentially everywhere in the world. So huge stuff. Huge stuff. Let's see if we can do maybe one more. I think we're good. I think we covered a lot of ground already. We'll end it with this. JMac. How many automotive makers are calling Elon right now to get FSD software? Prediction: once one has a deal, they will all follow. That's a great question. It was talked about on the earnings call. The one thing that was interesting, Tesla talking about this, is like, even if, let's say, Ford as an example, Jim Farley, one of the guys that's saying the right things, let's say, and trying to do the right things, but they've been falling flat on their face, unfortunately, as of late. Let's say they come out and they say, yes, Tesla, we're going to take your FSD and we're going to put it in our cars and we're going to do it, right? It will take 2 to 3 years at a minimum for that automaker to come out with their first vehicles that can drive themselves. But I do agree that once the first automaker decides to do that, then by default, every other automaker almost has to do that because they would be at a giant disadvantage if you believe that Tesla's system is truly the best one out there. I personally think so because I have a Tesla that has FSD. I don't know of any other automaker or any other company, even Waymo, that can take me from my house to the grocery store without me driving. That I can't take a Waymo. When I go on the Waymo app, I can't even hail a Waymo to my house because they're restricted to just LA, San Fran, and I think Phoenix. I forget I think it's Phoenix, the third city. Or Vegas, I forget. But they're restricted to very few jurisdictions, right? I can't ride hail a Waymo to my house. I just can't do it. Now, people will say, well, of course, but you have to pay attention for the car to get you to your store. 100% agreed. But I have to pay attention because I'm required to pay attention. That car is making it to the grocery store if I'm not paying attention. As it stands right now, mainly because the route is easy. And second, it's because the system has gotten so good that those easy environments aren't that difficult for the car anymore. But the key point here is that the car can do it, right? So it just becomes a function of just making sure it does it like that all the time. And that's just more data, more training, more data, more training, more chips, more video data that has to be captured. So I don't know any other system can do that, And then the argument becomes like, okay, well, Waymo can do that in Austin right now without a driver in the driver's seat, and Tesla can't. 100% agreed. But what's really stopping the company from achieving that? Is it a hardware issue or is it a data issue? And I think it's becoming increasingly more obvious that it's not a hardware issue, it's a data issue. And that once Tesla has all the data they need, they'll be able to, turn that on in Austin, let's say, or Phoenix or Vegas or Los Angeles. And then the car can do exactly what the Waymo car can't at a fraction of the cost in millions of units per year anywhere. And so I think that formula sells. Oh, excuse me. I almost made the perfect point and I had to freaking have a little burp. That formula sells itself. Can't even say it right. So That if for people that follow Tesla closely, that's where this is so exciting. It's because the pieces are starting to come together. The foundation has been laid. Countries like China have now approved Tesla being able to run self-driving technology. Tesla's investing $10 billion in its AI plans to make the system even better. I don't know, man. It seems like we're in for a wild year for the company. Forget the stock. For the company and the technology. 2024 seems to be a tipping point, a watershed moment, let's say. That's that's pretty interesting. Shout out. I went to the coffee shop this morning and they spelled my name Farzad instead of they spelled it Farbad. Which some people would agree with that name, but whatever. It's all good. Thank you so much. All right, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you so much for stopping in. If you enjoyed the content, like and subscribe. If you want to support the channel, links in the description below. Mwah. Have a good rest of your Monday.